The dusty Rose Saloon lived up to its name. Dust motes dancing in the lamplight, rose-colored curtains faded to pink from too many Wyoming summers. Jake Hollister nursed his sarsaparilla at the corner table, trying to ignore the poker game that had gotten loud 3 drinks ago. He'd come to town for fence wire and salt licks, nothing more. The Double C Ranch didn't pay him enough for whiskey and cards, and even if it did, those vices had taken his father down a road Jake refused to follow. He was content with his lot, a bunk in the ranch headquarters, 3 squares, and honest work under an honest sky. The laughter from the poker table pitched higher, and Jake glanced over despite himself. Catherine Cole sat with her boots propped on an empty chair, hat pushed back on her dark hair, a tumbler of amber liquid catching the light. She was laughing at something one of the men had said, but even from across the room, Jake could see the flush in her cheeks, the slight sway in her shoulders. His boss, the woman who'd inherited the Double C 6 months ago when her father passed, who'd surprised every rancher in 3 counties by running the spread herself instead of selling out. She was sharp as a tack come morning, tough as braided rawhide when the work got hard, and fair in a way that made men twice her age respect her authority. But tonight she was 3 sheets to the wind and getting louder by the minute. "Another round, boys," she announced, slapping the table hard enough to make the chips jump. "I'm celebrating." "Celebrating what, Miss Cole?" asked Reese Harmon, the slick-talking son of the neighboring ranch owner. He'd been circling Catherine like a buzzard since spring, all white teeth and empty promises. "Freedom," Catherine declared, throwing her arms wide. "No more old men telling me how to run my own damn ranch. No more bankers saying women don't know cattle from—" She stood up too fast and grabbed the table edge, overcorrecting and nearly toppling the other direction. Reese caught her elbow, but his grip lingered too long, his other hand settling on her waist with casual presumption. "Easy there, Cat. Why don't you let me help you home? Got my buggy right outside." Something cold settled in Jake's gut. He knew that tone, knew the calculation in Reese's eyes as he steadied Catherine, already steering her toward the door while her coordination lagged behind her intentions. "Appreciated, Reese," Catherine mumbled, trying to focus on his face and missing by a few inches. "You're a real gentleman." "That's right, come on now. Let's get you some fresh air." Jake was moving before he'd fully decided to, crossing the saloon in long strides. "Begging your pardon, Mr. Harmon, but Miss Cole's already got a ride." Reese turned, irritation flashing across his handsome features. "That right? Didn't hear her mention it." "Just the same." Jake touched the brim of his hat to Catherine, who was squinting at him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Ma'am, your wagon's out front. Said I'd see you home safe." Understanding flickered in Catherine's eyes, there and gone like heat lightning. She blinked slowly at Jake, then at Reese, then back again. "Oh, right. Jake." She patted Reese's chest absently. "My ranch hand. Promised to wait for me. Good man, Jake." "You don't even have your wagon in town," Reese said, looking Jake up and down with obvious disdain. "Saw you ride in on that roan mare." "Miss Cole took the wagon. I rode in after." The lie came smooth, necessary. "Come on, ma'am. Long ride back and morning comes early." Catherine nodded with the careful precision of the very drunk and detached herself from Reese's grip. She swayed, and Jake stepped in to take her arm, bracing her weight against his side. "Now hold on," Reese started, but Catherine waved him off. "Yes, fine, Reese. He's good people. Thanks for the cards." She'd lost $40, near as Jake could tell from the chips still on the table, but that wasn't his business to mention. He guided her toward the door, feeling Reese's glare boring into his back. The other men at the table watched with varying degrees of amusement and disappointment, their entertainment for the evening walking away on unsteady legs. The night air hit them like a splash of cold water. Catherine sucked in a breath and stumbled on the boardwalk. Jake caught her before she could fall, holding her upright with a hand on her arm and another at her back. "Easy, Miss Cole. I've got you." "Jake." She said his name like she was testing it out, trying to remember something important. Jake Hollister. You're a good man, Jake. Just doing what's right, ma'am. That Reese. She shook her head slowly. He's not good people, I know that, I do. But everything gets... She gestured vaguely at the world. Fuzzy. Everything's fuzzy tonight. I know, ma'am, let's get you home. The problem of transportation remained. Jake's mare, Rosie, stood hitched at the rail, but there was no wagon, and Catherine was in no shape to ride. He considered his options while she leaned against the saloon wall, humming something off-key. All right, Miss Cole, Rosie's strong enough for two, but you'll need to hold on. Think you can do that? I can do anything, she declared, then immediately undermined this by missing the hitching rail she'd reached for. Tomorrow. I can do anything tomorrow. Jake swung into the saddle and offered his hand down. Step up on the rail there. I'll pull you up. It took 3 tries and some creative maneuvering, but eventually Catherine sat behind him, her arms wrapped tight around his middle, her forehead pressed against his shoulder blade. He could feel her breathing, slow and heavy. If you're gonna be sick, tell me and I'll stop, he said. Not gonna be sick, she mumbled into his shirt. Gonna sleep. Stay awake, Mom. Need you to hold on. She tightened her grip in response, and Jake nudged Rosie into an easy walk. The moon was near full, lighting the road silver, and he kept the pace gentle to avoid jostling his cargo too much. 5 miles stretched ahead of them, but there was no help for it. They rode in silence, broken only by hoofbeats and night birds. Halfway home, Catherine stirred against his back. Jake? Yes, ma'am? Why'd you do that? Help me, I mean. You could have let me make my own mistakes. He thought about that for a moment, choosing his words with care. You're my boss, Miss Cole. Wouldn't be right to leave you in a bad situation when I could help. Just because I'm your boss? No, ma'am. He kept his eyes on the road ahead. Because it was the right thing to do. You'd have done the same, were positions reversed. She was quiet so long he thought she'd dozed off, but then she spoke again, softer this time. My father always said you could judge a man's character by what he does when nobody's watching, when there's nothing in it for him. Your father was a wise man. He was. Sadness crept into her voice. He'd be ashamed of me tonight. Getting drunk, making a fool of myself. You're grieving, Miss Cole, and you've been carrying the weight of that ranch alone for 6 months. Sometimes the load gets heavy. That's kind of you to say. She sighed against his back. You're always kind, Jake. Noticed that. You're patient with the green horses. Help Cookie even when it's not your job. Found you fixing the bunkhouse roof last week on your day off. Roof needed fixing. Most men would have let it leak. Her words were starting to slur again. You're different. Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They rode on through the silver night, and by the time the Double C's gates appeared, Catherine's breathing had gone deep and even. He walked Rosie right up to the main house, a sturdy 2-story with a wide porch that had seen better days. Getting Catherine off the horse and to the door tested his ingenuity, but he managed, supporting most of her weight while she mumbled protests about being perfectly capable of walking. He tried the door, unlocked, which made him frown, and helped her inside. The house was dark and quiet. Cookie slept in a room off the kitchen, but the old man was deaf as a post and wouldn't hear them. Jake guided Catherine to the parlor and helped her onto the settee. Miss Cole, you're home now. I'm going to fetch you some water and then I'll be off to the bunkhouse. She caught his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. Jake, thank you, really, thank you. In the moonlight through the window, her eyes were clear for just a moment, genuinely grateful and maybe a little embarrassed. Then she closed them and turned her face into the cushion. Jake found the kitchen, pumped a glass of water, and left it on the side table next to her. He found a quilt and draped it over her sleeping form. Then he slipped out into the night, saw to Rosie's needs, and made his way to his own narrow bunk. Sleep was slow to come. He kept seeing Catherine's flushed face in the saloon, Reese's calculating eyes, the trust she'd placed in him without hesitation. He'd done the right thing. He knew that, but he couldn't help wondering what tomorrow would bring. Some folks got embarrassed about being helped. Some pretended it never happened. Some got angry at the helper for witnessing their weakness. He hoped Catherine Cole was none of those types, but he'd know soon enough. Morning came with roosters and sunlight, same as always. Jake dressed, splashed water on his face from the basin, and headed to the barn. First light meant feeding time, and cattle didn't care about human dramas. He was mucking out stalls when he heard the footsteps, knew them for hers before he looked up. Catherine stood in the barn doorway, backlit by the rising sun, wearing work clothes and her father's old hat. She looked rough, shadows under her eyes, face pale, but she stood straight, and when she met his gaze, she didn't look away. "Jake, got a minute?" "Yes, ma'am." He set the pitchfork aside and brushed straw from his hands. She walked into the barn, stopping a few feet away. For a moment she just stood there, and Jake waited, letting her find her words. "I remember last night," she said finally. "Not every detail maybe, but enough. I remember Reese Harmon trying to get me to his buggy. I remember you lying about having a wagon. I remember the ride home." She paused. "I remember you being a perfect gentleman when you didn't have to be." Jake nodded, but said nothing. "I made a fool of myself," she continued. "Got drunk, played cards badly, and put myself in a situation I should have been smart enough to avoid. That's on me, and I'm not proud of it." She took a breath. "But I want you to know I'm grateful. What you did, standing up to Reese, getting me home safe, not taking advantage when you could have, that speaks to who you are, Jake Hollister. Just did what was right, ma'am. Most people don't." She smiled, small and rueful. "Most people do what's easy or what benefits them. You did what was right, and I won't forget that." Something warm unfurled in Jake's chest, but he kept his voice level. "Appreciate you saying so, Miss Cole." "Catherine," she said, "when it's just us, you can call me Catherine." He met her eyes, saw something there he wasn't quite ready to name. "That wouldn't be proper, ma'am. Proper went out the window when I got drunk in a saloon and rode home pressed against your back." Her smile turned wry. "Besides, any man who sees me at my worst and still treats me with respect has earned the right to use my Christian name, at least in private." "Catherine, then," he said, testing it out. It felt right in his mouth, natural as breathing. She nodded, satisfied. "I need to ride out and check the northern fence line today. Spring rains did some damage, and I want to see how bad it is before I order materials. Would you come with me? I could use your opinion." It wasn't a question, not really, but the way she asked made it feel like one. Made it feel like she wanted his company, not just his labor. "Be glad to." They rode out an hour later, taking the northern trail through the grasslands that rolled like a green ocean under the morning sky. Catherine sat her horse with easy grace, and color had returned to her face. She was quiet for the first mile, but not uncomfortably so. "I haven't been drunk like that since I was 18, she said eventually. "Snuck whiskey at a barn dance and spent the next day praying for death." "What made last night different?" She was quiet for a moment. 6 months ago yesterday, my father died. I guess it just caught up with me. All of it. The grief, the responsibility, the loneliness of it all. She glanced at him. "That's not an excuse, just an explanation. Don't need to explain yourself to me. Maybe I want to." She faced forward again, watching the horizon. "You ever feel like you're play-acting? Like you're pretending to be someone you're not sure you actually are?" Jake considered that. "Every day, maybe. Keep thinking someone's going to figure out I don't know half what I'm doing." She laughed, genuine and surprised. "Really? You always seem so competent, so sure. Just do one thing at a time and hope it's the right thing." He shrugged. "Sometimes it works out. That's what I'm doing. One day, one decision, trying not to think too far ahead or I'll freeze up. They rode in companionable silence after that, and Jake felt something shift between them. Not the distance of boss and employee, but not quite friendship either. Something unnamed and new, fragile as spring ice. The fence damage was worse than expected. 30 feet down, posts snapped, wire tangled. Catherine dismounted and walked the line, Jake beside her, both of them calculating in silence. 4 new posts at least, she said. Maybe 5, and all new wire for this section. I can have it done in 2 days if the weather holds, 3 if it rains. She corrected. I'll work it with you. Ma'am, Catherine, you don't need to. I know I don't need to. She turned to face him, thumbs hooked in her belt loops. But I want to. This is my ranch. I should know how to do every job on it, from birthing calves to mending fence. He saw the determination in her eyes and recognized it. The same stubbornness that kept her here instead of selling out and moving back east. The same strength that got her out of bed this morning instead of hiding from her embarrassment. All right then. We'll do it together. Her smile was worth the extra work of teaching while doing. Good. Now, there's something else I need to say. Jake waited, watching her gather her words. Reese Harmon's going to hear about last night, how you stole me from him, as he'll see it. His pride's going to be stinging, and men like that get mean when their pride's hurt. She met his eyes squarely. He might cause you trouble, might spread talk, might even try something physical if he catches you in town. I need you to know I've got your back if that happens. You protected me. I'll protect you. Don't need protecting, Mom. Maybe not, but you've got it anyway. She held out her hand, not dainty like a lady, but straight and strong, like a man offering partnership. We square, Jake. He took her hand, felt the calluses that matched his own, the firm grip of someone who knew hard work. Square. They headed back as the sun climbed higher, and Jake felt something had fundamentally changed. Not in the world, maybe, but in his world. In the small universe that consisted of this ranch, this woman, this life he'd built from nothing. He'd come to the Double C because he needed work and they needed hands. He'd stayed because the work was honest and the pay was fair. But now he was staying for a different reason entirely, one he wasn't quite ready to examine too closely. Over the following weeks, they worked the northern fence together, Catherine learning the proper way to set posts and string wire, Jake learning that her determination outstripped her physical strength, but her cleverness made up the difference. They talked while they worked, about the ranch, about their childhoods, about the weather and the cattle, and nothing at all. Cookie noticed and mentioned it one morning while Jake collected his breakfast. You and the boss getting on well, the old man observed, not quite making it a question. She's good people, Jake said carefully. That she is. Cookie studied him with eyes that still saw plenty, despite their years. Her father thought well of you, before he passed. Told me once you were the kind of man he'd want running the place someday. Jake nearly choked on his coffee. He said that? Exact words. That Hollister boy's got integrity in his bones. Cookie chuckled. High praise from Colin Cole. Jake carried those words with him the rest of the day, turning them over like smooth stones in a creek. He'd never aspired to more than he was. A good ranch hand, reliable, steady, but maybe he could be more if given the chance. Summer rolled in with heat and long days. Reese Harmon showed his face at a community barn raising, threw some hard looks Jake's way, but didn't start trouble. Maybe Catherine had gone to his father. Maybe he'd just lost interest. Jake didn't care which, so long as it left them alone. One evening in July, after a particularly long day bringing the herd down from the high pasture, Catherine found Jake at the corral where he was brushing down Rosie. Jake, you got plans for supper? Same as always, cookie stew and a bunk. Come up to the house instead. I made pot roast and there's way too much for one person. He hesitated, and she must have seen it, because she added, Please, I'm tired of eating alone." So he went, hat in hand, feeling strange walking through the front door instead of the kitchen entrance. The dining room was set for two, candles lit even though the sun hadn't fully set, and the smell of roast beef and fresh bread filled the air. They ate and talked, the conversation flowing easier than Jake would have thought possible. She told him about her mother, who died when Catherine was young. He told her about his father's struggles with drink, the lessons learned from watching a good man lose his way. "Is that why you don't drink?" she asked. "Part of it. Mostly I just don't like feeling out of control." "That makes sense." She was quiet for a moment. "I haven't touched a drop since that night. Don't plan to again. Beyond maybe a glass of wine at Christmas." "Don't have to swear off on my account." I'm doing it for me." She met his eyes across the table. "That night taught me something. About vulnerability, about trust, about the kind of person I want to be and the kind of people I want around me. You could have held that over me. The drinking, the needing help. Could have made me feel small. Instead, you just helped, like it was nothing." "Wasn't nothing," he said quietly. "You matter. What happens to you matters." The candles flickered in the silence that followed, and Jake realized he'd said more than he meant to, but Catherine didn't look uncomfortable. She looked hopeful. "Jake Hollister," she said softly, "what am I going to do with you?" He didn't have an answer, so he offered the truth instead. "Whatever you want, Catherine. I'm here." She stood then, came around the table and held out her hand. He took it, let her pull him to his feet, and found himself standing close enough to see the gold flecks in her brown eyes. "What I want," she said, "is to stop pretending this is just boss and employee. Stop pretending I don't look forward to seeing you every morning. Stop pretending that night didn't change everything." His heart hammered against his ribs. "Changed everything how?" "Made me see you clearly, not just the worker, but the man. The kind, honest, decent man She stopped, bit her lip. "The man I'm falling in love with." The world seemed to hold its breath. Jake raised his free hand slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted, and cupped her cheek. "Been halfway in love with you since you hired me," he admitted. "Fell the rest of the way that night, seeing you vulnerable and trusting me anyway. But I didn't dare hope." "Hope," she interrupted. "Please, Jake, hope." So he kissed her, gentle and careful, and she kissed him back with 6 months of loneliness and longing. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she smiled up at him. "This going to be strange?" she asked. "You working for me?" "Probably," he grinned. "We'll figure it out. Together." "Together," he promised. And they did. It wasn't always easy. There were raised eyebrows in town, comments about propriety, questions about a woman rancher taking up with her hired hand. But Catherine Cole had never cared much for gossip, and Jake had never cared for anything but doing right. They worked the ranch side by side through summer and fall. Come winter, when the preacher asked if anyone objected to the union, the church stayed silent. Reese Harmon wasn't even there to glower. Standing at the altar, holding Catherine's hands, Jake thought back to that night in the saloon. How one choice to do right had changed everything. How kindness had come back to him tenfold. "What are you thinking about?" Catherine whispered while the preacher droned on. "Just that I'd save you 1,000 times over. Even if I wasn't drunk," he smiled. "Especially then. You're worth saving, Catherine Cole." "Catherine Hollister," she corrected, squeezing his hands. "Catherine Hollister," he agreed, and kissed his wife while the congregation cheered. They walked out into the winter sunlight together, equal partners in every way that mattered, and headed home to the Double C Ranch where it had all begun with one act of simple human kindness. Sometimes that's all it takes. Someone willing to do the right thing, someone willing to see you at your worst and choose to stay anyway, someone willing to help without asking for anything in return. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, Love grows from that small seed of decency, flourishing into something strong enough to last a lifetime. The Double C Ranch prospered under their joint stewardship, and years later, when folks asked Jake Hollister what his secret was, he'd smile and say, "No secret, just do right by people, and good things have a way of coming round." Catherine would add, "And marry someone who saves you when you need saving, then spend the rest of your life returning the favor." They'd laugh together then, sharing a look that spoke of inside jokes and hard-won happiness, of fence mending and pot roast suppers, of a drunk night in a saloon and the morning after when truth was spoken plain, of a love built on kindness, honesty, and the simple act of doing right.